All right, everyone. Hopefully you're refreshed from lunch and a little walk around. Sun is shining, and we're about to start an afternoon of our remaining talks. Our next speaker is from Sandia National Laboratories. For those of you who may not be familiar with Sandia, it is one of our premier national laboratories with several locations around the country. And people hear Sandia and they think, yeah, it's a couple buildings somewhere. It's actually a very large enterprise with, I think, 16,000 approximately, 20,000 researchers, engineers, and scientists solving some of the hardest problems we have in a whole lot of areas. We're very pleased to have Sandia as a long-term partner with CERIAS. And our speaker is a principal scientist with Sandia at the Livermore location. The main Sandia location is in Albuquerque, but they also have a large presence in Sandia, in Livermore, California. And Dr. Ruby Booth works in area of risk and risk assessment management, and is going to tell us about a new endeavor that Sandia is about to undertake. Thank you.
This microphone on, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, wonderful. Okay, so yes, I am Dr. Ruby Booth. I work with Sandia National Labs. For those of you, for students who are familiar with National Labs, we are contractors to the U.S. government. We have a special relationship, so we are able to do classified work. We're able to do assessments and development of sensitive things for the government. We have a very wide portfolio. And Sandia is also one of the nuclear labs, so we are part of making nuclear weapons. But we do a lot of things. So we do work on hypersonics, we do work on satellites, we do combustion research, we do environmental research, all kinds of things. And one of the things that we have begun to do recently is this Digital Assurance High Consequence Systems mission campaign, which I'm fortunate enough to be a part of. So we're just going to walk through this very quickly. We're going to talk about the mission campaign, what it is, how you can interact with it, and sort of give you a sense of what's going on. Thank you so much for having me and letting me about this with all of you. Very excited to be here. So what's a mission campaign? Well, as you know, a national lab is a large conglomerate of researchers working on hard problems. And mission campaigns are short-term, strategically important, focused, coordinated investment areas that we create in order to solve hard problems. So when we have a really tricky problem and we don't know exactly how to solve it, but we have a sense of the problem space, we will invest a large amount of money for a short amount of time in order to sort of crack that nut. So they tend to be 5 to 7 years long. We anticipate this one will be 7. And they can have funding of up to $18 million throughout the campaign for university partners. That means professors, students, et cetera, to do research. We want to work very closely with universities on this problem because it's a very scientifically challenging problem, and y'all have some of the best minds in the world here at Purdue. So that's why I'm here. And we do this by making a putting together a coordinated set of problems and making a strategic portfolio of projects. There we go. So how can your university interact with our mission campaign? Well, there's a lot of different ways. So one is through formal partnerships. So university professors can be on our boards. Dr. Spafford is going to be the head of our external advisory board, for which we are extremely grateful. University professors can take sabbaticals and join us. There are joint appointments, there are partnership agreements, and you can co-host events. There's also technical talks, co-authoring publications, and just generally working together on research. And then there's LDRDs, and I'm going to talk about that more because that's an area that we want not only your professors to be interested in, but students as well. And that's something that's a bit of a departure for this particular mission campaign, and we're very excited. We want student-led proposals. So also we have internships, we hire folks, and we are willing to serve as PhD advisors and do course development and stand in for lectures and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that we can partner. So what is this mission campaign? The mission campaign is designed to enable decision makers to make evidence-based decisions about the risks to high consequence systems. So we want to be able to digitally assure high consequence systems more efficiently than we can today. So in order to understand that, in order to do that, we need to be able to create rigorous, rapid, cost-effective, defensible, and generalizable assurance cases for high consequence systems across their entire life cycle. So let me step back. So what do I mean by a high consequence system? Because consequences, right, is a concept we all understand. Actions have consequences. But when I talk about a high consequence system, I could mean almost anything. In this case, we are talking about systems that are generally speaking quite simple. So you can think about like a satellite system, you can think about like a hypersonic system, something where they're simple in the sense that we're not talking about an entire computer network, right? We're talking about generally they have hardware and software that's quite constrained. It's meant to deal with a specific problem set. So for instance, the satellite has limited functioning. It's not going to do everything that your phone can do. And a lot of times the technology that's used on some of these systems is actually quite archaic. So your legacy systems, if you think about, for instance, industrial control systems in critical infrastructure, that would be a high consequence space. And in these cases, we're trying to assure sometimes older systems that are not as complex, but that have to be secured against adversaries who are very invested. So if you think about like a US satellite, if you think about a hypersonics, weapon system, these are things where our adversaries are very interested in compromising those systems. It is a high consequence target. They care. And so we have to secure these systems, which are not necessarily as complex as some of our other systems, but where the stakes are very, very high and the resources being deployed against these systems are vast. So if we have an adversary nation decide that they want to take those out, we really need to work hard to secure those. And in order to do that, we have to be able to make an assurance case. So that involves all of this, right? It involves being able to securely design. It involves being able to use formal methods to validate the requirements. It involves whole system analysis. It involves the human factor, right? How do I make sure that that this is usable and secure from insider threats? The hardware software understanding. So if I have got to use something like a COTS part, like something commercial off the shelf in these systems, how do I make sure that that's secure and that it's not doing something that I don't intend it to do? Cyber risk analysis. So that looks at all of this and puts it together and says, okay, you've used formal methods here, you've used some other kind of validation here, you've used red teaming over here. How do I put that together to make a coherent argument? And then with data science, how am I comparing, say, this version of it to the instantiated version of it to tell whether or not they're the same, because we want to make sure that nothing has been changed from the moment that I put this in the field to the moment that I want to use it. So we developed these three thrusts: discover, control, and prioritize. So the idea that we want to be able to discover any problems that that might arise. And when we talk about worrisome behaviors, we're not just talking about, viruses or compromise. We're talking about any behaviors where the interaction of two parts of a system might create something problematic. So if you think about like the Boeing Max, you think about things of that sort where there are problems. The emergent behaviors can be problematic if this component and that component are both working as intended, but you put them together and that does something that you don't want it to do. So these systems are simpler often than some of the more like than say a whole computer network, but we still need to be able to understand their behaviors, model their behaviors, and make sure that nothing emergent is problematic. Control, right? So when we do find worrisome behavior, how can we drive that down so that we get rid of them, either by getting rid of vulnerabilities, separating things out, somehow putting a moat around the threat so that they can't get at it. And then prioritize, right? We don't have an infinite amount of money. When we're thinking about securing high consequence systems, we can't spend all the money that the United States has on a specific system, right? I've got to prioritize this, right? Because we've got to pay for multiple systems. We've got to pay for all the other responsibilities that the US has, right? And so we have to be thoughtful about our investments in these things. So when the government goes to invest, how do I tell them, hey, you want to spend your $1 million here and not there, right? This is going to give you the best benefit. So we have a call to improve any of these areas. And you can work with Sandia PIs to submit university collaboration proposals. So right now we've just sent out the FY25 call, and that is closed, but we will have another one in the future. And so basically what these calls are specific sets of research that we're interested in having you submit to all your good ideas and help us move these problems forward. So the investment area background that we're looking at for this LDRD is that we want to enable system designers to be able to make evidence-based trade-offs. So we want transformational solutions, right? We want to get at this. We're looking at a 2 orders of magnitude improvement in speed or scalability for these problems. We want to be able to make provably secure systems and secure integration of untrusted products, right? So I want to be able to make a high consequence system like a satellite secure from the design phase all the way through to instantiation and sending it up into space, and then it's staying up there. I also want to be able to take COTS products and put them in those. So do I encapsulate them? How do I do that? How do I make sure that something that I take off the shelf can go into the system and be safe and secure? Intelligent threat mitigation, right? So if I can't secure against every threat under the sun, how do I prioritize which threat to secure against? This is something when you think about adversary modeling, it can be quite challenging in this space, right? Because there's so many scenarios. And whenever you involve humans in the problem, you have epistemic risk, right? So it's not just aleatory risk, which is about sort of what are they going to do in terms of, are they going to do A or B, but also this sort of large space of, I don't know what I don't know. They might come up with something that I've never heard of. They might have motivations that I don't understand. They might have a particular agenda that doesn't match my model of their agenda. And then informed engineering trade-offs, right? So we don't just get to secure cyber, right? We have to secure the physical system. We make all of these trade-offs around, for instance, there's a wonderful story at Sandia about a tank, right? You can make a wonderfully secure tank, so great, completely defensible, won't move, right? Or you make a very fast tank, very light. It goes very quickly to its target, no armor. And so how do we find that sweet spot between these engineering trade-offs for these high consequence systems where it really matters that we need them to work, we need them to be stable, we need them to be resilient in the face of attack, but we also need them to meet all these other requirements, right? So we can't spend the entire budget on security. We have to also have capabilities. And then in terms of design, implementation, and maintenance, where can we make those trade-offs that give us the most benefit? So we have broken this down into 3 areas for this year. We will continue these areas and add more as we move through these, like I said, 7 years of the mission campaign. Scalable analysis, right? So the idea that we need to be able to analyze both the systems that we are designing and also systems that already exist, but we need to be able to do it more quickly. We are very involved with formal methods at the lab and also with probabilistic assessment methods. So how do we do that more readily. For any of you who are in the room who do formal methods work, you know that it can be quite difficult to scale. It is time consuming to develop. Yeah, it's time consuming. Similarly with probabilistic methods, if we're going to do a digital twin, if we're going to do some kind of modeling of something, it takes time to build those models accurately. So how do I make this scalable so that you have to have, so that you can do it more quickly, so that you have to have less technical expertise? We're not expecting novices to do this, but how do I take it so that I don't need someone that has trained for 20 years to do it? I need someone who's trained for 15. You know, how do I bring it back just a little bit so that I can have more folks who can do this work? Rapid modeling and characterization, right? Explicitly modeling and reasoning about and managing uncertainty about the threat, right? So how do I understand the threat, both in terms of specific activities that might compromise a system, so the sort of threat vectors, but then also the threat actors. How do I model adversaries in a way that's more appropriate so that I'm not having to secure against 100% of the threat at 100% strength? Because right now that's what we're doing. We're saying, or at least we are inclined to do that. We are inclined to say that all adversaries, all of the time, want to compromise all of the systems in any way possible. Well, that's very, very expensive, right? If I can say the burglar is going to break into my house more likely by the window in the back door than by the window in the front door, that gives me some room to maneuver, right? It's not that the window in the front door can't be broken, but by the front door can't be broken, but the window by the back door, that's generally where we see them come in. That's helpful, right? What's the equivalent of that for high consequence systems? And how can we take that from one high consequence system or from one high consequence context to another? So for instance, how do I take it from satellites to hypersonics? How do I take it from this specific system being set up over here to this other system? A lot of our stuff at threat modeling globally is very tactile, right? We're talking about like the matter attack chain. We're in a very specific space. How do we take this and look at it more strategically to be able to make trade-offs better? And then tailored composition. How do I bring arguments together? This one, the terminology on this one sometimes puts people in a bit of a pickle, but basically it's not the tailored composition of the artifacts, it's the tailored composition of the argument. How do I take something where formal methods have been used in one place and probabilistic reasoning has been used in another, and we're on this other one, all we've been able to do is some bench testing, or I've done some red teaming. How do I bring all of those arguments together into a coherent risk picture? Right now, it's quite challenging to do that. And so we're going to have coordinated projects to focus on these. And so we're looking for collaborative research around these topic areas. Our base scenario is non-colluding adversaries with one insider. So that insider could be a human insider, corrupted tools, or corrupted supply chain. We're looking at denial of service attacks. And we have not unclassified exemplars that allow for partnerships, and also I know that some folks at Purdue do also have a clearance. So that's another area that you might be able to work on if you're interested in that. So we are making our project selections by saying, it creates the solutions that we're looking for. It demonstrates relevance to our strategic objectives. Again, it's not just a small solution to a small problem, but it helps us get to the big solution to the big problem. And it rigorously characterizes the failures in the project. So this is something that if you work with a PI, if some of you students work with your professors to come up with a proposal for something like this, one of the things that you're almost always asked to do for a grant proposal is to think about go, no-go spaces, right? How do I say that this was successful or unsuccessful, and how do I do that with milestones and check-ins? And so that's something we look for. And so we have a number of proposal selection criteria. One of the things I want to highlight here is that we are looking at not only technology readiness, but also human readiness level. This is a relatively new concept for us to bring into the LDRD space, but the idea that it's not always easy for people to use technologies. And so sometimes you have to prepare the ground. And so improving the ability of people to do the work in addition to improving the technology is. This is going to be, so we're with the proposed Sandia internal research dollars, it's going to be each of the LDRDs are between 100K and 500K per year. And we can work with, so students and interns can work with professors and Sandians to submit late start proposals. We've already done this year's round of late start proposals, but we are actually working to next year have student-driven proposals. So you'll work with a PI at Sandia and a PI here, but you actually come up with the idea and do the work, and there's funding for that. So so if you have any questions or would like to learn more, I'll be here for the rest of the afternoon, and I'm sure that that you can also get my my email address, or you can email Will Zortman to apply, and his email is here, and the slides are available. And this is just our timeline for this year, and that's it. Thank you so much for having me.